The Western Chromatic scale consists of 12 notes. These include, on the piano keyboard, 7 white keys and 5 black keys. In the diagram on the right, these keys are numbered 1 through 12. And I can play these notes and get the very familiar pattern. Most of the time, musicians don't compose tunes with all 12 notes. They pick out combinations of notes that sound particularly good together. Some of these combinations are referenced as the major scale. So, for example, the C major scale consists of just the 7 white keys. And because of the layout of the black keys, the first 3 notes are odd, 1, 3, 5, and the next 4 notes are even, 6, 8, 10, 12. This is just an artifact of the way the black keys are laid out on the keyboard. However, most of the time, a musician does not refer to 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12. Instead, they just number the keys within the scale, the piano keys within the scale, 1 through 7. But before we move on, I'd like to take a look at what happens if we shift this down a bit and look at D major. So D major still has the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th keys, but now we're beginning with D, so then we have D, D sharp, E, F, and so on. We can slide right along, and if we move to E, the same pattern occurs. So we're just starting with this pattern that begins with C and pulling out the 7 notes that sound best together. And then we repeat that pattern for every other key on the keyboard. So if we would look at C sharp, then we would get a pattern that would look like this: 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10, and 12. The ratios of each of the keys in this subgrouping of seven keys within the entire chromatic scale is always the same. That's because each key has the same ratio to the next key. So C to C sharp to D sharp, and so on, E to F sharp, E to F. In each of these cases, the ratio of the frequency of the first note to the frequency of the second note is always going to be the same because of the way the keyboard is laid out and the way the scales are laid out. However, in most cases, we don't use any of these combinations. Instead, we pull out 7 keys out of the 12, and we number those 7 keys 1 through 7. So if I play the notes in C major, they sound like this. And if I move to D major, although the absolute frequency shifts, the relationships of one note to the other sound the same. And I can keep sliding down the keyboard in this manner, and it will always give me the same pattern. If I want, I can start with a sharp key like C sharp. And then if I play the C sharp keys, the pattern of the relative frequencies is always the same. So to sum up, we start out with 12 keys, but we pull out 7 notes that sound especially good together. And out of the 12 keys, these turn out to be the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th keys on the piano keyboard. However, as we've mentioned, musicians don't refer to these as the 1st or the 3rd or the 8th. Rather, they actually refer to the keys 1 through 7 within the C major scale. And so in the Notes and Scales module, we're going to use this point of reference. We're going to pull out the major scales and there are 12, one beginning with each note of the 12 chromatic notes. And if you would randomly select a sequence of notes drawn from within all 12 notes of the chromatic scale, the chances are it wouldn't sound very good. However, if you randomly select notes within one of the major scales, the chances are much better that the result would sound pleasing to the ear. So that's why musicians pull out these subsets of notes within the larger 12-note universe of notes within the chromatic scale.